All right, this is T1.10. It's the last multiple choice question on this practice test. An experiment was conducted to investigate the effect of a new weed killer to prevent weed growth in onion crops. Two chemicals were used, the standard weed killer, denoted S, and the new chemical, denoted N. Both chemicals were tested at high and low concentrations on 50 test plots. The percent of weeds that grew in each plot was recorded. Here are some box plots of the results. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to talk about what I notice here. Okay. First thing I notice is that the new chemical at low concentration seems to have a wide variety of the variable, percent weeds that grow. Whereas like this standard chemical at high concentration seems to have a much lower variability. These two medians seem to be about the same. This one seems to be a little bit lower. That one seems to be noticeably higher. This is the new chemical at high concentration is the only one that has some high outliers in its data set. Okay, anyways, which of the following is not a correct statement about the results of this experiment? So for questions like these, I don't like cross off any answer choices. I just put a T if it's true and an F if it's false. Okay, so when I'm all done, I should have 4 trues and 1 false. Okay. All right, statement A. At both high and low concentrations, the new chemical results in better weed control than the standard weed killer. Okay, so we need to figure out what is better. Okay, is better having a higher percent of weeds grow or a lower percent, right? 0 is better. We want 0 weeds growing. 50% is worse. Okay, so now that that's been established, at both high and low concentrations, the new chemical is better than the standard. Okay, so is the new chemical better than the standard at the low concentration? Well, the median seems to imply yes, right? The new chemical has a lower median. If we look at high concentration, again, the median would indicate yes, that the newer chemical is better. Okay, so I'm going to put a T next to that statement because it appears to be true. All right, statement B. For both chemicals, a smaller percentage of weeds typically grew at higher concentrations than at lower concentrations. Okay, so for that, we're going to compare. Let's do new chemical first. Okay, high concentration versus low concentration. Okay, the high concentration has a smaller percentage. Okay, all right, let's compare for the other chemical, high concentration versus low concentration. The high concentration, again, has the lower percentage. So that statement appears to be true as well. Okay, statement C. The results for the standard weed killer are less variable than those for the new chemical. Okay, the standard weed killer has less variability there compared to the new one, and the standard has less variability there compared to the new one. So yes, statement C is another true statement. Statement D. High and low concentrations of either chemical have approximately the same effects on weed growth. High and low concentrations have the same effect. Okay, let's see if that's true for the new chemical. So high versus low, high concentration versus low concentration. Okay, so those aren't exactly the same medians, but there's definitely overlap when we look at the middle 50%. Okay, so I'd say there's not much of a difference when we compare the new chemical low versus high. They're almost the same. The low concentration is slightly higher, slightly worse. But when we look at the standard chemical, okay, high concentration versus low concentration, those medians I would say are significantly different, okay? And there's very little overlap in the middle 50% of values, right? They're like completely separated on that scale, on that number line, okay? So that statement D is true when we're comparing the new chemical, but I would say it's not true if we're comparing the standard chemical, okay? Low and high concentrations of the standard chemical do not seem to have the same effect. They seem to have quite different effects. Okay, last choice is E. Let's clean up our graph here. Some of the results for the low concentration of weed killer, not all, but some of the results, show a smaller percentage of weeds growing than some of the results for the higher concentration. All right, let's do new chemical first. Okay, so do some of the results in the low concentration, like maybe that result there, show a smaller percentage than for the high concentration, like that there? Yes, of course, right? The minimum value for the new chemical low concentration is indeed a smaller percentage than the maximum value in the high concentration. Okay. All right, let's see if that could also be true for the standard chemical. Okay. So the standard chemical at low concentration, one of its values is like 25%, but at the high concentration, there's one value that's above 30%. So yes, again, we found at least one result for the standard chemical where we have a smaller percentage for the low concentration than we did for the high concentration. Okay. So the only false statement here is